This morning I would like to introduce ladies from the Eaton Auxiliary, American Legion Auxiliary in Eaton, Colorado from Unit 26. And this is Mary Burks and Susan Riemann. And also we have two authors here with Unit 1879 at Colorado State University, American Legion Auxiliary, who have produced the SerVe cookbook. And we would like to interview them this morning and let you ask questions that will just bring delight to you because of the history and everything that went into publishing this book. And we have Karen Baylor, the president of the American Legion Auxiliary Unit 1879 at CSU, past department Colorado president from 2012 to 13. And then we also have Ann Diaz, secretary of the American Legion Auxiliary Unit 1879 at CSU. Ladies, we welcome you this morning, and we would like to ask you some questions about the book and just have you share with us what went into it. Your new book, SerVe, was published to celebrate 100 years of your organization, the American Legion Auxiliary. Tell us about that organization.
All right, well, I would love to tell about that organization, but ladies, thank you for inviting us, and thanks to the library for hosting this program. It's exciting. So at the end of World War I, President Roosevelt was concerned about what would happen to our GIs returning from the war in Europe. And he and a small group of people met and decided that they needed a place where veterans could go, talk with other veterans who understood what they had as far as shared experiences, or where they could just go and be together and not talk, because that was difficult too. They'd seen some tough things. And so thus Congress chartered the American Legion, in 1919, which is open to all veterans with an honorable discharge. The women now. We weren't about to be left behind. We were busy folding bandages here and taking care of a lot of the jobs that many of our soldiers had vacated. And so Congress then, listening to their insistence, said, okay, we will form an auxiliary unit called the American Legion Auxiliary that can consist of women who were veterans in their own right or who had a very close linear relationship to another veteran. And so that was the birth of our organization, 1919. And so our small but mighty, we like to say, unit at Colorado State University brainstormed some ideas about what could we do to really honor 100 years of this organization, which is in every state and also many foreign countries. And SerVe was born. And do you want to talk a little bit about the process we used?
Okay, so we first had to see if there was a book that went as far back as 1919, as we talked about this cookbook idea to honor and celebrate the many ways that women served, including through their kitchens and these fundraising cookbooks. And we did find a book from 1919 from Eureka, California on eBay, a reprint of a book. And so we thought, okay, that's the key. If we start digging and asking people to find books, and they did. We found one from at least one from every state, covering all eras, and they were so interesting. Books from the 1920s had leather covers with embossed logos on the front, or canvas stitched covers. And then of course we moved into the spiral bound books, which people know of pretty commonly today in some binder sorts of formats. And we collected recipes, and we wanted to celebrate the original authors and also make it a little bit more contemporary with ingredients that people would use today. So it also serves as a bridge between civilian and military folks to inspire conversation, but also through generations. Some of these recipes, you look back and you think, wow, these are from the 20s. They're very similar to what we would make today. So we had a lot of fun putting it together.
Great. You've kind of answered part of this, I think. How and why did your auxiliary decide to write this book? Kind of touched on that, I think, a little bit. And what were your goals? What are the goals for writing?
We do have a 3-point mission with the book. One is to celebrate the service of women who have long known, just show up with food and listen, and you know, you'll get people's attention, right? And to raise funds this way with something that everybody can relate to. So celebrating that history, inspiring conversation by educating people about the wars and giving them enough food stories to get them thinking about asking those sorts of questions of veterans, and also supporting veterans with funding because it's a fundraiser.
Mhm.
So those were our goals.
Well said.
And I think you've touched some on this question as well. You said SerVe includes previously published recipes that have been updated. From where did these recipes come? And you mentioned, didn't you, almost every state?
Well, yes, the book includes recipes from every state, or in auxiliary terms, we call them departments. But I think we gathered about 89 books. That may have taken
Wow.
6 months,
Oh, my.
making sure we had one from every state. And our women then gleaned through those recipes and found about 600, I believe, Anne.
We narrowed it down to 600.
That we really felt we wanted to try. And of those, and believe me, there were some we did not choose to use. But I think that there were about 400 books that we then sent
Recipes.
out, or 400 recipes, I mean, thank you, that we sent out to members, to friends, to family across the country, because we had learned a legitimate cookbook needs to then have 2 home test kitchens,
Yes,
minimum.
yes.
And so we sent the recipes out and encouraged our members, first of all, to determine exact quantities. In a 1919 cookbook, we didn't know how much 15 cents worth of ground lamb was.
Right.
And of course, most of these cookbooks didn't include temperatures or preparation features. And so we encouraged our test kitchens, first of all, to look at the recipe, to determine those quantities, those baking times, etc., but also to put a real contemporary spin on the book, like Anne mentioned, with ingredients that would be used today. So we're very grateful for those many auxiliary sisters and other family members, like I said, and friends across the country who offered to serve as test kitchens for us. And they, by the way, took a lot of these lovely photos
They did.
that are included in the book.
That was a lot of fun working with them. They would email a picture. Food photography is a kind of an art on its own, and we had some professional help with that. From Stacy Moore Photography and John
John at CSU.
John at CSU is a photography professor. Taught us a lot, which we shared with the recipe testers. And so they would make something and they would proudly, put it on their best dishware and take a photo and email it and say, well, how did I do? And we'd have to write back and say, okay, if you haven't eaten it yet, try it, with some different lighting. So there are a lot of photos from across the country here, which was really fun.
Well, how long did the entire process take, and who was part of it? And if you can, discuss the procedure you used in writing the book.
Well, first I would say that, again, about our small unit, 11 members were actively involved. I'm always proud to say Anne did the design for the book and did just a marvelous job on the book. And the other 9 members, plus Anne and myself, scoured through the books to determine what recipes, like I said, we all cooked. Many of us gained just a few pounds from all the food testing.
And Karen researched and wrote the histories and gathered food stories
Wow.
throughout the book. We have someone who's a dietitian, Jen is a dietitian, We have someone who has a housekeeping business, so she helps glean some of the household tips from some of the old books. We have Rachel, who is very good with technology,
Very
who
good.
helped us learn to do e-commerce. We just have this, of 11 women, this extraordinary collection of giftedness that allowed us to create this, and with the help of some sponsors, outside sponsors, for literally no other cost other than the printing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So, which allows us to, of course, maximize our donation. We're really happy with that. Did we answer that question? I don't remember what the question was.
You know, let me just pop something else in here very quickly too before the next question, and that is that we opted at the beginning to include a photo and a small sidebar of each of the 11 members of Unit 1879 who worked on the book. One question we're often asked is, why did you join this organization? What's in it for you? What's your motivation? And for many of us, it's to honor a family member who may have served. But as we mature in this organization, it's not just about our family members. We really have learned to reach out and try to honor not just our veterans and our active military, but their families who also have served. So it was pretty exciting for all of us to go on that route. So you are introduced in the book to the different members of Unit 1879 who spent so many hours putting together this tome.
I think those are fun columns also. We tell how we serve, why we serve, to also inspire other people to see that they can get involved in different ways, just thinking about their own experiences and how they might share their gifts, so.
Very nice. Could you tell us about a couple of your favorite or unique recipes?
The Grasshopper Pie is my favorite by far.
Yeah.
It doesn't use real grasshoppers.
Oh no, it doesn't use real grasshoppers, but you know, a lot of people remember it. I'm from the Midwest, so it's kind of a Midwestern throwback, but some people in different parts of the country don't seem to know what it was. Grasshopper Pie? Does anyone here remember Grasshopper Pie? No.
The name.
The name, well, it was made with creme de menthe and creme de coke,
Okay.
to give it like a green and black kind of a look. And now Bailey's, of course, makes a chocolate mint liqueur, which we updated with that. And we also updated, it's normally made with an Oreo crust, and we gave it a health nut crust, so with dates and cashews. But it's really pretty. I will show it off. It's a lovely recipe.
Nice.
So I
Tastified.
love the memories I have of this dessert, as well as the memories I had recreating it with some of my auxiliary sisters, and it's just really delicious. So that's one of my favorites.
Well, I will talk about a funny recipe.
Okay.
I had plenty of favorites. We found in a cookbook from Alaska. It was called the Great Alaskan Cookbook, and it's fairly new. It's a 1993 cookbook. There was an individual who submitted this cookbook because submitted this recipe. In Alaska, many of the early miners who went up looking for gold, etc., really missed their maple syrup. The Vermont maple syrup was missing, and they wanted it for their flapjacks. And so a recipe was created for miners' maple syrup, and let me read you the ingredients. 6 medium potatoes peeled, 2 cups of water, okay? So you take those potatoes, boil them down until the 2 cups of water are 1 cup. And then with that cup of water, add to it a cup of brown sugar and a cup of granulated sugar. Put it in your refrigerator in a sealed container, and the book says in all capital letters, do not taste until after 2 weeks.
Oh my.
And Karen did this.
I did this, yes. And was that particular day making squash muffins, and so I took the miner's maple syrup down and taste tested it.
Yes, and it was 2 weeks.
It was just over 2 weeks.
Okay, not a day before, it was over 2.
And
It was amazing with the squash muffins. Oh, it was, and to think that it was made of potatoes. No one would know.
No,
You wouldn't know.
no.
so that's kind of a fun one
It
as
was
well.
really fun.
We have sections on some recipes that are fun for children or for parents to make with their children. So we've tried to be pretty exclusive about that. I would also love to show a photo of a Bavarian spice cake.
Oh, that's so pretty.
Our sister Sharon
Oh, yeah.
did this in a bundt pan. Took it out of the pan, lovely, lovely topping. And then there just happened to be an old sunflower left in Anne's vase in the kitchen,
Mhm.
which got plopped right into the middle. And is that beautiful?
That's wonderful.
It is.
And then pictures of Sharon, we were talking about the members who are presented in the book, and Sharon became our bundt queen. Everything, made everything in a bundt pan, and it was always a big to-do to have her flip it over and make sure that it came out. We had a lot of fun with that.
We did.
Just great.
There are so many recipes. We could, you can tell we're passionate about this.
It was fun.
We could go on and on.
And then there was, you mentioned in addition to recipes, some other things you included in the book. Would you like to talk any more about that?
Yes, I would love to, thank you. So we thought it would be important, again, to educate the public, but also to really discuss some of the things our veterans went through and help our public be more aware of what were the causes of wars or conflict and exactly what happened. And of course, in a few short pages, you can't tell the whole story. So I researched 10 different resources for each of those conflict periods and then synthesized them into a short summary for each. And it was maybe a surprise to me to realize that even the experts disagree on particular numbers and dates and those kinds of things. And so a prelude at the beginning of the book says, this doesn't tell the whole story, it's just enough to whet your appetite so that you will research more. So we have covered all of the war eras, including the War on Terror, which we've been involved in for a long time. We also had, Anne mentioned our sister Rachel, who is so amazing. We decided a lot of our veterans may never get to Washington, D.C. to see their memorials. These are in their honor. And so Rachel found some photos that we could use, and we've even included some sketches of those designs for the more current conflicts that haven't yet been built. But we wanted our veterans to see those.
Great idea. Important.
Yeah. Something else, and Anne, maybe you can talk about this a little bit. Maybe one of my favorite parts of the book would be the veterans' food stories that we shared. You want to share something about that? Any particular stories that come to mind?
Well, yeah, there are some from every era. Let's see. We have a story, a couple of stories about honor flights. One is a gentleman who I spoke with, a Vietnam veteran, who was really still carrying a lot of pain in his heart about his experience. And he was telling the story of when he got to go on the honor flight and just how different it was. He drew the parallels from getting on and off the plane and those experiences. And as he was telling the story, he said, but they were making chocolate chip cookies on board the flight. And the smell of the chocolate chip cookies, the smell of home, this was on the way back from the honor flight. And he said, the fact that they would make these for us and share them and all the senses that it brought back, he got tears in his eyes. He said that was like the final thing that made it okay for him. So we share that story with the cover story of the Cowboy Cookies, the recipe for the Cowboy Cookies. We have, what other stories do we have in there? You were pretty involved in collecting those.
I was. Oh my gosh, there are so many great stories. One that I would mention is of a friend of ours from Fort Collins, Rick, served 3 tours in Vietnam. And on his last tour, as his squadron came under fire, and as he was the last one into the helicopter, after the other men were all safely inside, he was shot in the back. He took a shot and yelled out. They got him into the helicopter and took them then back to their safe place. And once he got there, I should mention en route, because the bullet went through his shoulder and was fairly shallow, one of the other soldiers ripped the bullet out, plucked it right out. And so you can imagine the amount of fluid and blood he would have lost. When he got back and got taken care of and properly sewn up, he was incredibly dehydrated and remembered that he hadn't eaten some peaches left over from his lunch. And so he found his rucksack, and when he opened it, it was a mess of peaches. And what he then later discovered is the bullet penetrated the metal top of the peaches, hit the bottom, ricocheted off, and thus went through his shoulder rather than through his heart.
Wow.
So thankfully that dear veteran was saved by food, by a can of peaches. And so in honor of that, we've been trying to encourage Rick to go on the honor flight. And he just did. He's very close friends, having been scoutmasters for years with one of our members, Kim. And so we decided we would make peach cobbler. And of course, after testing many recipes, we chose one from Georgia.
From Georgia.
Of course. Made 18 sheets of peach cobbler, which we then sold on a Saturday, sold out in 3 hours.
Farmer's market.
At the farmer's market in Fort Collins. Sold out and earned enough money not only to send Kim along with Rick and another one of our friends, Bob, on the honor flight, but we also then donated about another $1,000, I believe, to the honor flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had great support from the farmer's market in Fort Collins and also the Sam's that donated ice cream for us to serve on top. So we all have the best recipe in the world for peach cobbler.
Peach cobbler, that's in the book along with the story.
Nice.
To try it.
And I think you pretty much answered the food story question that we had, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay, where will any profits earned by the SerVe be spent? Where will you
And take it away.
with the profits?
Okay, so as I mentioned, we were able to really cut costs on the book by creating it ourselves and not having to hire out at all. So nearly 100% of the profits after paying for the cost of the book to be printed will be donated to mental wellness programs for veterans. We've already been able to support a group at CSU, the Veterans Writing Project.
Creative writing project.
In publishing a book of their stories, which recently came out. It's called Charlie Mike. And also have donated money to the National Veterans Creative Arts Festival, which the auxiliary collaborates with the VA to do every year. And we have some pictures in the book of some of the arts that it's painting, music, storytelling,
Writing, dance.
all as forms of healing. So we wish to support that. I'll find the page, I'm sure, here we go, about the power of the arts. So we have, we could even have a car show. I don't know, car show in there, but, we're just getting started with that, with our donations, so.
And most departments will sponsor a creative arts show for disabled veterans. They bring in their multiplicity of arts, whatever they are judged at the state level, And then many of them go on to a national competition,
Hmm.
which this year will be televised live from Florida.
Wow.
Because of COVID, unfortunately, can't be live.
Mm.
So, but it's very much healing, and again, plays on the strengths of our veterans. They are so much, they have so many more strengths than there are weaknesses or deficits, and we really seek to honor that.
And celebrate that, yeah. You had asked how much it was. The book costs $42, plus tax for folks in the state of Colorado. And for $42, you're getting, a lot of people have said it's so much more than a cookbook. So not only are you donating to worthy causes, but you're getting a fabulous book with great stories and really wonderful recipes. So we think it's worth every penny. We haven't had a single complaint, so.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, someone mentioned that could be a great coffee table book, you know, just have it sitting there.
Yeah, I think that's sort of how we describe it. It's like a coffee table book, conversation piece, yes.
It really is.
Well, and I think you've mentioned too, that it'd be a great book for social studies classes because of the history
That's a
and
good
the
idea.
information about the military and, you know, just the involvement there. It would be great for students even.
Can you tell I'm a former educator and principal of schools, so education's always on my mind. But yeah, I believe everything in here is very readable, very understandable, and again, it's just a small piece to whet someone's appetite as to all the gratitude that we really, really need to pay to our veterans.
And they could bring some of those lessons to life through cooking and bringing the other senses about, like in the 40s, during World War II, when there was sugar rationing, they can learn about that and different ways that people sacrificed and, oh, what did those recipes look like without sugar for reasons other than why we might avoid sugar today.
In fact, there's a cute story about that. And this is a now 95-year-old woman who in World War II was from Michigan, decided she wanted to serve in the military. And so she was sent from Michigan to the East Coast, where we had difficulty getting mechanics, and especially to work on planes. Jeanette was a very gifted artist. And so she was put to work drawing sketches of airplanes that were used in the war, in World War II. And then she would take the engine apart and draw pictures of the exploded, not exploded as in blown up, but enlarged pieces, so that mechanics then, who were not familiar with the planes, could look at these pictures and know how to repair or reassemble them. Her story was she'd always wanted to go to New York City, coming from Michigan. She heard great stories, and so she and one of her friends got a 72-hour leave, went to New York City, where this gentleman was from, and they stopped at his home to visit with his mother, who, of course, mothers, parents everywhere, what can I make you to eat? Which of my home cooking? And so the son indicated what he'd like to eat, and then Mom asked Jeanette, what would you like? To this day, Jeanette has a real sweet tooth. And she said, I'd love some fudge. And the mother said, just a minute. And she raced into the kitchen. When she came back, she was proudly carrying a little paper sack. And she said, I have 2 cups of sugar, which is just enough for a batch of fudge. And that was what she had saved over 7 months of her son's deployment. And today we go down to the market and buy 10 pounds of sugar and don't think anything of it. And so really, again, helps us understand what was it like and how much people went through during those tough times.
And of course, we have the recipe for fudge next to that story, which calls for about 2 cups of sugar.
Yes.
From a Michigan, originally from a Michigan cookbook. So, and a picture of Jeanette and some of her artwork. So,
Thank you so much for your input and information, and everyone's going to want this book.
it makes a great gift. It really does.
Oh, yes. with the holidays coming up, great idea.
Well, we're really grateful to the Eaton Library that they're selling the books.
Yes.
Folks closer to Fort Collins can go to Savory Spice and the Gilded Goat. They have them there.
Yes. Or you can get on the website or on
Okay.
Facebook site and order them too. And you want to give directions for that?
Yeah, so our website is, of course, www.alaservecookbook.com. alaservecookbook.com. We have a Facebook page of a similar name. You could search and find us and get to know a little bit about the recipe testers and some other things. And if you're local, you can put in a code for porch pickup and save on shipping. We can get the book to you, but I think here in Eaton, just come to the library.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great idea. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
You know, if there's nothing else, if you don't have any other questions, I'd like to end with a story that really has touched my heart, like most of them in this book have. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So for those of you who will be listening, this will be on about page 43. I read a book a number of years back called Once Upon a Town, The Miracle of the North Platte Canteen. And this is reproduced in the World War II section of our book. And it's just such a heartwarming story. And so just to kind of synthesize what the book was about, and this is a true story, Christmas 1941, there were some folks in the fine town of North Platte, Nebraska, who watched troop trains taking young soldiers back and forth across the country. And a lot of these were young kids, you know, and whether you're young or whether you're not so young, going off to war is a pretty frightening thing to think about. And so this group of people decided, what can we do? How can we show these soldiers how much they're valued? And so they built a platform right at the railroad station, and on that platform they would, and again this was out of their generosity, they weren't paid for this, they would bring in piles of fried chicken and wonderful homemade sandwiches and cakes and cookies and beverages. At one point someone brought a piano, and invariably a GI would jump off the train during their 20-minute stop and start playing, and some of the young girls who were around who had helped serve the food would find themselves being plucked by a GI and would do a little dancing. They had a guest book which many of the soldiers passing through would sign. And again, these folks, it was people from Nebraska, people from Wyoming, people from Colorado, out of the goodness of their heart, put together just beautiful spreads for every single train, day or night, that came through their city. And they vowed that they would take care of this human cargo until the end of the war. And in fact, they went beyond that. They went until most of the GIs had returned home. And so just to share this, a couple sentences. Each and every day between 3,000 and 5,000 military personnel came through North Platte and were welcomed at the canteen. Toward the end of World War II, that number increased to 8,000 a day on as many as 23 separate troop trains. Again, and remember, all these foods were donated. The only federal funding, or donation, I guess, other than from these folks for the canteen, came from President Roosevelt. He'd heard about this and really wanted to personally support the effort, so he gave a $5 bill, which I kind of think is cute. But anyway, someone says, as the boys, the soldiers were going off, I would pray for all of them. I'd watch them get on the train. I'd ask the Lord to bless and keep them, and I wanted to keep smiling just in case they turned around to look at us as they left. But I was praying for them with my eyes open. And I would like to just share with you, the author of this book, Once Upon a Town, said, this sounds like a dream, but it wasn't. 6 million soldiers passed through that little town of North Platte. 6 million of our fathers before most of us were born, and every single train was greeted Every man was welcomed. It was a love story between a country and its sons. But that's not quite the end of it. There's a small museum today in North Platte, and indeed some of those guest books still exist. And there, in the story again, is a young man during World War II, Kelly Pagnano, who signed a guest book in 1943. He was from the East Coast, and he always determined he would bring his family back and see if he could find his signature from that long ago. He did that in the 1960s. He brought his family out west to North Platte. He found his name in a guest book, and he wrote back to the community. He said, "You tell those people who live there that there are a lot of guys like me who don't know a whole lot about their town, but we know the most important thing. We know that it was a place where, when we needed it most, we were treated wonderful." And it is very heartwarming. And again, as we've got Veterans Day approaching on 11/11, not too many days from now, again, I hope that all of us in our heart not only feel that gratitude, but can express it. And as Ann said earlier, reaching out with food, even if you might not know the words to say.
Yeah.
Reaching out with food or just being there can be one way we treat our veterans and active military. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
wonderful story.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks for being here. It's fun to share with you.
We appreciated it. Thank
But
you.
you've got some food stories of your own.
Okay.
Anything else, Miss Catherine, for us before we close this interview?
Not that I can think of. We've appreciated it so much. I mean, this is just, I can't tell you, reading through this book, it's heartwarming. It is touching, inspiring. I've not seen a book like this for a long time. There are a lot of coffee table books, but not one like this at all.
Came from our hearts with
Oh,
love.
you can tell.
Sounds like
You can tell. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
again. And just in closing, I might add that, again, Unit 26 in Eaton, Colorado is accepting new members.
That's true.
If you're living closer to or would like to join us at 1879 in Fort Collins, again, we have a site on Facebook.
Sure, reach out to us there.
Reach out to us there. And even if you choose not to affiliate with our organization, anything you can do for these wonderful folks who have ensured our freedom is deeply appreciated. So happy Veterans Day to all of you.
Same to you.
Well, and I think these two ladies need to be commended too. They have kept the organization alive for over 20 years when there was not an organized unit
Oh, nice.
until it was just recently established again. There had not been a unit for like over 20 years. And these ladies are the reason that we have this unit today.
Beautiful, congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
So thank you.
And you as well.